And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So we're going to move away temporarily from movie chatter, talk about something that maybe you haven't necessarily pondered. Some people have, but I wasn't thinking about it until seeing images on social media, something called the violent jump between 2019 and 2024. Now, obviously, many of us have experienced all kinds of upheaval. It has been a very tumultuous time for many people. I don't want to speak for everyone. There have been highs, there have been lows, there have been disasters for many of us, and there have hopefully been some moments of pure joy and happiness. Being someone who is very introspective, as a younger person, the powers of introspection were as much a hindrance as a help, because I not only had a tendency to overthink, but I would overthink and I would jump levels ahead of where I needed to be, which was surface level, ground level. Make a decision today and don't worry about ramifications of a decision that you haven't made and you don't even know how the decision is going to pan out right now. Bring it down a couple of notches. So when I think of 2019 relative to today, there are a lot of pieces of my life that I took for granted then. That's a bit of a cliche statement, but you'll bear with me. But there are a lot of components of my 2019 existence. If you want to even say 5 years ago, you want to say December, that's fine. It doesn't say anything. This is not, it has to be a particular month or it has to be exactly, 60 months. It's just 5 years of life. Where were you then? And it's a meme where you post a picture of yourself in 2019 versus today. It could be maybe you've been on a fitness journey, or maybe you were in a terrible relationship and now you're happier. Could be anything. It's just thought process, mindset. And when you personally ponder high points and low points of 2019 versus where you are now, it's interesting to think about, because there are so many pieces of my life as it was in 2019 that no longer exist. I could never have imagined a lot of different things. And with all the highs and lows, with all of the kind of triumphs and tragedies, still here. And literally, figuratively, psychologically, symbolically, I am in a better place now than I was 5 years ago. Doesn't necessarily seem so obvious. I mean, certainly to a person who only knows me through social media. But 5 years ago, I was living in an apartment in Huntington, quite comfortably, I might add. I wasn't really hurting for anything. A big part of that is because my father lived a mile away. And despite being considered a pretty resourceful, intelligent individual who had kind of come out of his shell as a much younger person, I didn't really have a social life until well into my 30s. I still relied on my dear old dad for a lot of things. And I don't just mean asking him for help financially, because I certainly did that. And those of you who know me know that. But I relied on him for things that I probably could have taken care of on my own. And I mean just normal problem solving, normal life stuff. I had, by the time I was 45, I had already been married and my marriage ended. I had already had real life experiences. I wasn't just someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie Twins. I wasn't living on an island by myself. Oh, he's intelligent, but he can't really function in the real world because he hasn't had any practical experience. I had a lot of practical experience, but I still struggled to make decisions for myself because I always had someone that I could ask to make them for me. Now, if you ask 2019 me, do you think 5 years from now your dad's still going to be around? I would have said, yeah. He was in good health, 76 years old as of 2019. And maybe he had slowed down a little bit, but my dad was such a whiz bang that 90% of him was still pretty fucking impressive, for being honest about it. He was still living alone. He was still driving. He was still living his life, much as his father, well into his 90s. I want to talk about a lifetime end boss, Nathan Cohen, at age 96. And I please don't take this the wrong way. He outlived 5 girlfriends. 5! And they were all a lot younger than him. The guy was just ridiculous. At 96, my grandfather was still paying his own bills by check on time every month. His house was still spotless. My dad, as a younger man, 20 years younger, at 76, was still doing his own thing. And I didn't imagine, you think about your parents' mortality, but it's more from a general, at least in my instance here, more from a general uneasiness. Try not to think about really negative and terrible stuff, such as there will come a time, and maybe sooner than you think, where there are going to be a lot of decisions that you need to make. There are going to be moments where you're going to have to plant your feet and stop backpedaling because there isn't anybody behind you. There is no one to defer to. Wasn't really thinking of any of these concepts all the way back in 2019. But things happened, right? We all went through COVID, and hopefully you and yours came out of it okay health-wise. I know a lot of people who didn't, and people who got brutally sick, and a lot of people who got it and nothing happened, right? We all remember how crazy that was, the disparity in terms of the experience of actually getting it. Did you even feel it? I didn't feel it, but my brother was on a ventilator, and just fucking nuts. But if you had asked me in 2019, and this is where you get into, you have the kind of mindset where you know what your day is going to be before you have it. And I don't mean a 9-to-5 job. I mean from a broader sense that so many of your days, it could be work, but it's, let's just say, gym, work, gym, school, work, gym, school, work, special project, whatever it might be. This is going to be your day, and you can't imagine an existence where this is not your day. Well, somebody at any point in 2019 and said, in 2024, do you think, for example, that you are still going to be working out at Bev's gym? I would have immediately been dismissive of the question, and I would have said, well, yeah, what are you kidding me? Yeah, I'm going to be a lifer. I am never not going to be a member of Bev Francis Powerhouse Gym. What speaketh you? Like, this would have been, it would have been funny and comical the way I reacted, but that's what I would have believed. Now, if someone had asked me, do you ever see yourself? Do you think you're going to be a homeowner in 5 years? I wouldn't have had as dismissive of an attitude. I would have been curious. I would have said, well, do you mean like living in a home, in a house by myself? I would have asked as naive a question as that. I'm pretty sure I would have, even at 45 years of age. Yes, you're going to be living in a home somewhere other than where you are now, by yourself. I would have said, I don't think so. I think your tea leaves are wrong. Not buying it. But you make little changes, you experience a lot of small changes, and they add up to big changes. And this is something that as a younger person may not be immediately apparent until you have actually lived it. But I can say that my mindset in so many different areas of my life in the last 5 years, my mindset didn't shift all at once. It shifted slowly. I slowly realized that at a certain point in 2021, my father was not capable of making the same level of decisions as he had been. I could not rely on him the way that I had my whole life. He needed to be able to rely on me. And that was something that actually happened pretty quick. It was almost a matter of a couple of weeks where he went from this sort of benevolent elder trying to make sure that his occasionally absurd son didn't keep fucking things up or making dumb mistakes because he didn't take the extra time. Think this through, Jer. It's not that difficult. Things changed. In that instance, they changed quickly. Now, on the other hand, if you talk about the mindset of the gym, I really did believe that I was going to be a Bev's lifer. I started going there in January of 1993. I was still a teenager, for crying out loud. So I was 27 years at Bev's? It's fucking nuts, right? March 2020 happens, right? We all went through it. As much as I would have expected to reject, from a conceptual standpoint, the idea of not going to Bev's, hey, shit happens, right? You do the best you can with the cards you're dealt. As soon as we began to see, well, at least I did, a lot of people told me I was nuts or that I was panicking. But as soon as I saw, got to do something here, I think they're about to close the gyms, I think they're about to close restaurants, et cetera, we all remember. Go on Amazon, start buying home gym equipment. What are you supposed to do? But even then, in my mind, that was temporary. I was always going back to Bev's. But as the days and weeks and months ticked forward, even as things slowly began to normalize for many of us, I didn't really feel any great urge to go back to the place that I had called my second home for 27 years. I don't know why. It felt like there was a chapter of my life that had closed. I hadn't chosen to close it. It had closed. And for some reason, I was okay not reopening it. I don't know why. To this day, I don't have any specific reason. It just felt like some kind of an evolution, a weird evolution. And I don't even know if evolution is the right word. But I just felt like, in this instance, the universe was telling me to do something else. Never could have thought of it. As far as becoming a homeowner, well, that was my father's idea. He thought, okay, we'll sell my house, his house, and we'll move somewhere else. And he thought that he had another decade to go. He had only a matter of months. Didn't realize that he was terminal or that he was even in danger of passing. I mean, his mom, my grandmother, her health was horrendous for the last 7 years of her life. She almost seemed as if she was going to go on indefinitely. There was no way to live. As horrendous as it was to watch my father wither away and die and presumably suffer along the way, it wasn't protracted. And most of my memories of him are not as somebody who really couldn't do anything for himself anymore. But my memories of him were somebody who was hyper competent, who was always hyper competent. He was the best Scrabble player you'd ever known. He was the best at solving complicated 1,000-piece puzzles. Guy was a magician. It didn't make sense how good he was at solving puzzles. I'm a pretty smart guy. I was almost as good as him at Scrabble. That's really saying something because the guy was a fucking assassin at Scrabble. He was merciless. For a nice guy, he couldn't beat you bad enough. He could not beat you bad enough. It was just the way he was. Scrabble was like blood sport. Putting together puzzles, though, guy was an absolute machine. I ended up out here, and it was a very long and protracted situation where I signed papers on this home in March of 2022. And the original proposed closing date was January 15th of 2023. The actual closing wasn't until June of 2023. I didn't move in until November of 2023. And I almost wasn't able to close because I made a series of very avoidable mistakes. Now, this is something, if you had asked me in 2019, it said, you're actually going to be in a position, we're not going to tell you exactly, the mechanics of it. You're going to be in a position to close on a house and you're going to fuck up. I would say, yeah, I'm sure I will. But sometimes it's not a question of finances. It's a question of arranging those finances. It's about asking the right questions of the right people and not being afraid. And unfortunately, in those 5 years, between 2019 and 2024, there have been a number of instances where I could have made things a lot easier for myself if I had simply asked questions that I had in my head that I decided not to because I didn't want to make the other person uncomfortable. I'd rather make myself uncomfortable than potentially make someone else uncomfortable. It doesn't really work. We continue to evolve. In some cases, we regress. And here's a pro tip for you. Some of you are half my age. Just reaching a certain age and having certain life experiences does not mean that you won't continually fuck up. You just have to try to do better, resolve to do better going forward. And if you are hell-bent on getting something done, don't give up. Don't quit. And there was a situation here when attempting to sell one house to finance another. It's not such a crazy idea. My dad may have done that anyway if he had stayed healthy a little bit longer. We don't really know. But doing that, there's nothing crazy about the concept. But in this particular instance, there was a version of the story that was going to end with me losing a significant initial investment and forfeiting this property. I don't need to tell you how much of a disaster that would be if you're already in for well into six figures and they're going to say, sayonara, you're gone. It looked like we were headed for that because I wasn't prepared enough. And I didn't give myself any outs, as we say in poker. I didn't ask the right questions at the right time. And then selling my father's house was very, very taxing. It was way more arduous than it should have been because we had a buyer that committed and then he decommitted. You know, what do they say in college? He took back his commitment. He decommitted. Well, you're going to have to try to navigate a buyout, Jer. No, I don't think so. Here's another thing that you have to be prepared for. You will invariably need to make yourself uncomfortable. Do things you're not comfortable doing. Speak up at a time that you normally never would. And unfortunately, 2019 me never had to even enter into that kind of situation. I had been spared. I had been shielded. I had been protected from ever putting my foot down and even over the phone, getting in somebody's face. I don't mean losing my temper. We all lose our temper. But I mean putting another person in an uncomfortable situation because I'm not doing what they want me to do, or I'm not doing what they say that I need to or that I should. This was the slow progression over time. That if you had dropped 2019 me into these absurd negotiations on this house when it looked like the timing was fucked and I could have been defaulted here, 2019 me would have immediately acquiesced. My attorney said, we're going to have to try to negotiate a buyout. Maybe you can get some of your investment back. Some? I think that I would have just immediately said, okay, didn't want to get hands dirty. Just willingly throwing away crazy amounts of money. When I say throwing away, giving it up. Because, well, maybe you don't know this if you haven't gone through this kind of a process. If you have a house that hasn't been built yet, you put down what's called a binder. It's like a down payment, but it's not really a down payment. It's just to secure the lot, secure your future address, to be more, on the nose. You do that. And then they build part of the house. They don't necessarily build the whole thing to what your vision, because they have a model that they use, right? I mean, or maybe you don't know. I assume people know these things. I didn't really know this shit at all. But the inside, you're going to have certain modifications, certain enhancements. Mr. Cohen, everyone likes raised toilets. Okay, we'll do the raised toilets then, whatever it might be. So they're essentially building the inside of the house the way that you want them to. That costs money. So you just, right, going like this. We reach a point. I think we've reached the end of the line. It's time to it's time to see if we can navigate a buyout. Now, maybe because my dad wasn't around, my grandfather, who I had such respect for, I heard their voices. I heard them speaking in my head. You don't even think about turning around, Junior. Don't even think about it. Don't listen to him. Yes, he understands the law, but you can't go anywhere. This is your time to show us that you were paying attention. All those years that you fucking drove us nuts with your inability to ever take decisive action, always waiting for somebody else to help you. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. That's fine. But there isn't anybody to ask for help now. It's on you. Use the lessons that you learned in the last 48 years of your life, or the only 48 years of your life. You plant your feet and you figure out a way forward. It was very clear that this is what they would have told me if they were in front of me. They would say, you're not turning around. You're not forfeiting any investment. You keep moving forward. So the thing is, though, in life, regardless of what year it is, there are moments where we expect a confrontation, where we expect a fight. Here's another pro tip for you. Most people don't want to fight. And I don't mean physical combat. Most people don't want to fight. They're not itching for a fight. So rather than assume, oh, we can't win this, just ask another question. We'll say, wait a minute. I'm going to be a couple of weeks late with closing because I'm having difficulty, as you know, selling or finishing the sale of my father's house, or the money's not going to come through, whatever the specific mechanics are. Can't we just make an additional deal here? Well, yeah. What did you have in mind? Oh, it's that easy? Yeah, sometimes it's that easy. And why was it that easy? Because I did not immediately assume failure. Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, this organization will not tolerate failure. I was not going to tolerate failure. There wasn't anybody else behind me. It was on me. And I was going to sink or swim. But there is a version of this story. There's a version of the Matrix in which, as soon as I was told, I think we got to cut our losses here, whoever the fuck we is, it was just me in this instance, not the attorneys. I think we got to cut our losses and try to navigate it. But no, thank you. Not good enough. That was about 3.5 years from 2019 to 2024. It was the me of July of 2023 that presumably had lived enough, had lost enough, had hurt badly enough that I wasn't just going to fold up and turn around and walk away. I was planting my feet in the manner of Captain America. When everyone else and everyone around you is patting you on the back, don't worry about it, telling you to move back, you plant your feet and look them in the eye and say, you move. You move. Deal was struck, and lo and behold, here we are more than a year later. And as many times as we all disappoint loved ones, parents, occasionally friends, relatives, ourselves, we have moments, I hope for you, because I have. This was one of them. I hope we have moments where we know that the relatives who we loved, who we treasured, if they are looking down, they are smiling. Because you did learn something after all. You were paying some attention. It isn't always money or good advice they leave you with. Sometimes it's the understanding they had it a lot worse than you did. You don't have any excuses here. You can't just give up. You got to keep moving forward, pal. It's not about how hard you hit, right? Rocky Balboa. It's about how hard you can get hit. How big of a shot can you take? Again, not physically, but emotionally and psychologically. How much of a beating can you take? And keep rolling forward. This is what I know. Because in the year of 2024, 2023 started pretty good. It turned horrendous and it ended up as I turned 50. But 2024 started fine and then went into just an impossible level of shit show. So many things went wrong. I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes of omission, and I made almost as many mistakes of commission. You get knocked down, like the song, The Tub Thumping. You get knocked down, get up again. Never going to keep me down. Each time you get leveled, each time you're forced to take a knee, you pull yourself back up. Nothing wrong with going down. Ali said this. There's nothing wrong with going down. Everyone gets knocked down. Staying down, that's wrong. Pull yourself back up. Sometimes it's literal. If you're a boxer, it is literal. But talking about life, you can pull yourself back up. I was 45 years old in 2019. I had already lived what could be considered a full life if I had been born a century earlier and people were giving up the ghost in their 40s and early 50s. It's tougher to get around back then, right? And one of the reasons why the life expectancy was lower was so many people, like, for example, in 1918, all died of the flu. Life expectancy wasn't so good. But I didn't have any of this kind of experience. I had just pretty much skated through, doing what I wanted to do more often than not. It's not that I didn't care. I just didn't think that I had to do a lot of stuff that most normal people have had to do since they're in their late teens or early 20s. I grew up late. This is why I say I didn't really hit true adulthood until I was almost 50. The violent jump from 2019 to 2024, it was pretty fucking violent. Everything is backwards, it seems. Everything is upside down. My father is gone. I didn't really see that. I didn't see that as one of the choices. I thought he was going to be like his dad and live into his 90s. He wasn't as robust as his father, but I didn't think that he was going anywhere. And I thought that I was always going to be able to ask him these kinds of questions. And I know some of the dumb mistakes that I've made this year, he would have been hanging his head in shame, says, Jesus, the kid still didn't learn. That's such a cliche, isn't it? But even when you're my age, sometimes if you're fortunate enough to still have a parent with you, as I am with my mom, you get that from them. What is wrong with this kid? But the ultimate takeaway is to just not give up. To just keep going forward. I love Bev's Gym. It was an enormous part of my life. But I'm okay that I don't go there anymore. And as far out east as I am, maybe I could go on weekends, but it wouldn't be practical for me to go every day because I'm, like 35 miles away out here. It's not a big deal. One of the people I know, so we used to joke that we were cousins. She commutes from, I think she commutes from Nyack. I mean, that's a hell of a drive. So you can do it if you really want to. But I felt like that was part of my life. Close the book. And I have opened, you can say I've opened new books. Now I work out at the gym in the clubhouse, and I have a home gym in the basement here. 5 years ago, I still had dreams of Hollywood glory as a screenwriter, a project I worked on for 13 years, ended up not going anywhere, and I just got tired of working on it and getting hectored and beaten on verbally by a lot of people who I thought didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. So, if you had said to me in 2019, are you ever going to turn your back on screenwriting? To any extent, I would have said, no, I'm just going to keep going. Well, I hit a brick wall, needed to do something else. I'm a podcaster, right? People were telling me going back to then, oh, you should totally do a podcast. You would be good because of your movie knowledge and stuff like that. Okay. But I needed something. I wasn't just going to randomly become a podcaster. And my late friend Kenny, may he rest in peace, one of the biggest movie fans I ever knew, and certainly the biggest comic book fan that I knew. When he saw himself as Wolverine sometimes, he saw himself in a Star Wars sense as Anakin Skywalker. He invited me onto his podcast for the first time about a year and a half ago. I had so much fun, and we had really good chemistry. So I became his co-host. When he passed, it's a bit of a cliche to say that I wanted to pick up the torch, but I knew that I could do it, and I did it, and I continue to do it. And yes, it is a lot of work, but it's a tremendous amount of fun. And I hope, as much as, we have laughs, I say a lot of funny stuff and the impressions, a little Stallone here and there, but I hope that I'm not only informative and occasionally entertaining, but as an older person, because most of you who will be watching this are going to be younger than me, it's all right to not have all the answers, because I don't believe that we ever have all the answers. It's just part of it. As Bill Hicks, the late great comedian, said, it's just a ride. It's just a ride. Try to get the most out of it as possible. And for all of the madness that me specifically, and probably you as well, have seen and absorbed since 2019, you probably grown and changed more than you know, and will continue to do so. And 5 years from now, there'll be something, assuming that there's a social media still, there will be something, the violent jump between 2024 and 2029. And I hope that you'll also be surprised by how much you have evolved in those 5 years, the 5 years still to come. 2019 to 2024. When you think of this passage of time, what are the first thoughts that come into your mind? This has been episode 385 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.